I'm trying to coexist, exist. Yeah, I'm trying to coexist, exist. I'm trying to coexist.
And welcome back to the Ethical podcast, where we explore human experiences. What we have for you today is a very interesting episode. We delve into one of history's most ethically corrosive figures, Niccolo Machiavelli. His name is synonymous of evil, of ambition and power, corruption, betrayal. So many cynical, I would even say cynical ambition, ruthlessness, and the belief that the ends always justifying the means. In order to understand Machiavelli's way of thinking, we have to understand his environment, the people he surrounded himself. Where did he acquire these narcissist thoughts and behaviors? And it's fundamental to also know how envy carried his way of thinking, his lifestyle, but also what he saw every day around him. We're going to talk about his life, his infamous work, one of the best books, The Prince. It's about 90 pages. And the book itself is a guidebook of how to become a great tyrant. It tells you step by step. It's very practical. We can see that when a philosopher writes a book, they're tempted to write a little bit extra because there's so many thoughts, and all these thoughts are very theoretical, a lot of them not put into practice or hard to put into practice. Machiavelli is all the contrary. He has written The Prince knowingly that this is a practical guidebook for tyranny. And what's more funny is the fact that he addresses the book to Zio de' Medici in a very nice way, talking very highly about him. But yet the message afterwards is make sure that you don't get tempted by nice words or those that idolatrize you, because those are the ones that will betray you and backstab you. So the dedication of this book is quite direct, but also, I would say, cynical, but honest. We diagnose a psychological pattern here as well, one we see repeatedly on our daily modern life. From the boardroom to the political arena, we must ask ourselves, what is the psychological cause of unchecked power? Why does power corrupt so much? And also, when you acquire power, why is there the need of wanting more power? And ask yourself, are you wearing a Machiavellian mask? Or have you seen anyone that you know in your work environment, in your school, your sister, your brother, wearing a Machiavellian mask? This means that you will do anything to acquire power. And this is what we're going to be talking about today at the Ethical podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and more importantly, be part of the community. Let's start. So, to understand Machiavelli, we need to understand his environment. Machiavelli was born in that Renaissance time of Florence. It was a hostile environment, not only because of the political power fights that were occurring at the time, but also there was always this fear of invasion. There was always the fear of corruption, and that one family wanted to dominate the other. And Machiavelli, although to be clear, he was not born into power, he was a public servant. We can say that Machiavelli was an observant of all these behaviors. But yet, in order to be successful in this political game, he not only needed to know how to play the political game, but he also needed to be a tyrant, to be part of the political system. And let's be clear, Machiavelli wasn't a writer from a quiet library. He was highly engaged as a civil servant and diplomat to the Florentine Republic for 14 years, serving the Medici family. So this means that he was observing kings, popes, princes, leaders. And in that observation, he saw the ruthlessness of people's behavior. Imagine serving someone that you know will do anything to be in power. Wouldn't you be afraid of retaliation at any point? Wouldn't you be a little bit scared that if you don't obey, something catastrophic can happen? But even if you obeyed, something catastrophic can happen as well. So there was no safety. There was no such things as friends. There was no such things as alliances. Trust was always hanging in a thin line. Machiavelli understood this very well, being in the political game during the Renaissance time in Florence. So let's understand, why did he write The the prince in 1513. He didn't do it as an advice from the elite or to the elite, but he did it from a desperate place of exile and torture. Oh, you can tell when you read The Prince how miserable he is not being in the political game. You can see and you can feel with every letter on the pages that he's not quite content with his life anymore. He's not doing what he loves the most. It's not about serving people or the community or the leaders. It's all about doing tyrannic acts that makes you escalate in the political game. And what's funny is that when the Medici returned to power after being exiled, Machiavelli was in prison under suspicion of conspiracy, but he was later released and barred from public life. He wrote this book as a political job application, which is quite interesting if this is the way you want to put in a curriculum for yourself. And it's literally a manual for a single strong ruler. He always had this high hope that this ruler would unify Italy like it once was during the Roman times. Oh yes, Machiavelli loved the Roman Empire and his all magnificence and glory, but he also loved the political game that was all about betrayal, gore, power, assassinations, and more betrayal. But the irony of Machiavelli's dream is that he wrote this for those that have power, although ironically, utterly powerless. So the question is, did Machiavelli feel like a success? And the answer is simple, no. Why can a man like Machiavelli feel successful knowing that he would never be a top dog? He would never be the one in command, although he knew how to play the game pretty well. But yet he failed to betray those enough in power to get to the position that he always dreamed. And you can see this reflected on his writing. You can see his solace and the need to commit more tyrannical acts in the political spectrum, affecting people, but also getting the joy of knowing that he did this and that he's able to do more. And we have to think about it. Machiavelli wasn't talking about let's be evil and tyrannic only once. He's talking about being tyrannic all of the time. And there's no need to justify why your acts are embedded in evil and wrongdoing. It's simple. Just give in to your primitive desires. Be what you are outside of who you are inside. Reflect what you are inside out. Machiavelli believed that this animal instinct could be contained and should be let free and do as you please, to give in to your desires of power. And yes, and once you acquire power, why stop there? It was all about acquiring more power. And I can understand why Machiavelli thought in this way. If we think about it, let's say if you are going up the corporate ladder and you're advancing, you went from management to executive, but there's others above you and they will dictate your luck at any given time. So this is where Machiavelli delivers something impactful in his book. It's always better to get them before they get you. And that was his number one philosophy. Why wait? Why succumb to other people's decision? And also think about it. Machiavelli was always thinking about the plot of making other fall so you can elevate yourself. It must have been hard to work with Machiavellian leaders during this time, because at any given time, the risks of your life being taken or you being removed, incarcerated, enslaved were at a high stake. But where did Machiavelli saw so much evil? And we have to go back into analyzing Cesare Borgia, a man that Machiavelli seemed to admire. Well, Cesare Borgia was the illegitimate son of Pope Alexander VI. He was highly ambitious and ruthless. And as we all know, you cannot inherit being a pope. So Cesare had to find his way and how to acquire power. As a matter of fact, he wasn't the oldest. In order to be a successor of anything, including to climb the political structure of those times, his older brother was a threat. So Cesare decided to kill him. So what is Machiavelli looking at? He's seeing that if you behave in this way, and then as Cesare Borgia was doing all these criminal acts, he starts to see Cesare Borgia's success. So he started to observe that being treacherous and bad, as a matter of fact, comes with its reward if nobody knows you did it. What's more important is also analyzing Cesare Borgia's sister, which was always poisoning her friends. Quite a psychopath, right? Imagine day by day, how did this structures your mind and your way of thinking? Because not only you observe that they can get away with murder, or they're climbing up in status and they're considered an elite and they get the high rewards with this. So Machiavellian, his way of thinking, he must have challenged himself to think, well, I can see the difference of those that do good. And where does that take them? Nowhere. But yet I observe this kind of behavior, this ruthlessness, this goreness takes you to a higher position. But let's also face it. Machiavelli did not believe in heaven or hell. He did not believe in any deity. So for him, there was no moral compass. Like I said before, it was about living the present, getting what you need today, and getting them before they get you. And if you read The Prince as well, it's all about being an effective ruler. And being effective means that you don't need to romanticize. You must act upon. Completely different to any Plato, Socrates philosophy. This is the reason why The Prince perhaps is only 90 pages. It's a literally step-by-step guidebook on not only how to think, but how to act and be effective as a tyrant, ruler. But perhaps also is this book telling us that power really corrupts to the point where we must embrace the ugly truth of human governance, regardless of our moral and ethical compass. Because throughout history, we noted that I would say roughly 98% of rulers have had a hidden agenda. Take, for instance, the Catholic Church during those times. They monopolized literature. And what did this do? It kept everyone from understanding and knowing more to make better decisions for themselves, for their family, and also how to obtain power and wealth for hundreds of years. So the tyrannical man, it's all about accruing more because there's never enough. So Machiavelli teaches us two fundamental core values on his book, The Prince. The first one, which is something you probably heard before, it is better to be feared than loved. And Machiavelli is very practical with this state because you can always count on fear, but can you count on love? How many people have loved and still betrayed? How many people have loved and then that love fades? So love is an emotion, especially if you haven't learned the difference between making a decision to love and just loving just to feel good, which are two different things. When you make a decision of loving, that means that you're willing to take all the sacrifices and commitment and responsibilities that come during the good and bad of enduring that love, as opposed to when you decide to love just for the immediate gratification of love, that nice feeling, those nice moments. But yet, when the ugly times come, your heart gets corrupted, dismissive, and leaves. So Machiavelli knew very well that fear is something you can count on. Because think about it. If you fear, you will have somebody's attention. You will be on your guard. You will be defensive, but not defensive to attack, but defensive to keep yourself hiding, intimidated, silent. And I will explain a little bit about this concept of it's rather to be loved than feared. Because fear is what has kept us in survival mode for so long, and it's always present. Love, on the other hand, is not always present. And what I mean about this, it's not about that you stop loving someone. No. What I'm trying to say here is fear is something that we consistently have every day. So Machiavelli understood anxiety and depression. Because think about it, we're talking about these dark times where all you saw was injustice. All you saw were those individuals that reached to the top, taking advantage of those that didn't have anything. They were powerless. And when somebody feels powerless, wouldn't you be depressed of thinking that your life doesn't have any value? Or wouldn't you be anxious about what would I eat tomorrow? Would I be alive the next day if I don't obey to the rulers of the day? So Machiavelli understood this very well, and he saw it probably every time he walked around the city of Florence. And then think about it. Also, love is conditional, and it's also unreliable because it requires empathy. And let's say you make a mistake as a ruler. Will the people continue to love you in the same way? As we see, when things get uncomfortable, people tend to leave the leaders they once loved. And also, if there's no vulnerability and reciprocity, using love as a leader is not going to take you that far because you're always depending on others to reciprocate what you give. And also, if you don't deliver, that also brings down not only the popularity, but also will bring down how much they care about what you do and what you say. Fear, however, is predictable and reinforcing. What do I mean with this? Think about if a ruler presents a law that any person that steals, their hands will be cut. Isn't that predictable? And then not only that you embrace this law, but you show it to the public. You show everyone the severity of breaking the law. Wouldn't this cause fear? Yes, it would. And you would think 5 times before you want to become a thief, because not only the tyrannical leader has put a severe law that punishes theft, but now you're overthinking about not committing a crime that will put you in that situation, but also the anxiety fact that if you still do it and you get caught, you know the consequences of your choices. So this is interesting. It's a mind game. It's a psychological game that Machiavelli writes on this book. Because if we understand the psychological mind game that Machiavelli understands, is that it's easier to control through perceived punishment than through genuine affection. And I would say that again, it is easier to control through fear than through love. Because love is all about being free and not setting boundaries that will enchain you. It's a decision. It's a relationship. It's something that you give freely and don't expect anything in return. Fear doesn't work that. Fear is completely different. Fear will chain you down. Fear will hold you. It will make you freeze or flight and fight. But if you fight, you know the consequences. So you are left with flight and freeze. So for the Machiavellian leader, fear offers far greater psychological security. It's just simple. They just don't trust humanity. And trust is a big factor. If you can't trust, why will you gamble? That's literally what Machiavelli believed. Don't gamble your destiny. Play it safe. Do whatever you have to do to be in power and never stop. Because once you stop and you're not the top dog, you're not the top leader, you're not the one absolutely in charge, they will come get you. And it's more accessible to get you. But also, if you are on the very top, that means everyone else is observing you. Everyone else wants what you have. And if they think Machiavellically, they will do the same thing that you did to acquire that power. So I want to talk about the second point. The second nature of Machiavellian leadership belief is deeply narcissistic. And clinically, you can see this. Think about the traits. A narcissist believes they're special. They shouldn't be challenged. They feel superior than anyone else. And so many other traits. But one of the biggest is the inflation of their ego. Machiavellian behavior goes into this idea of grandiosity, the unshakable belief that they're uniquely qualified to rule, not to serve, and that the rules of common morality does not apply to them. Again, let's go back to understanding this. Machiavelli did not believe in a god, did not believe in anyone above him. He didn't have to answer to any sort of moral rules that were spiritual or soul. Machiavelli was all flesh, the flesh and today, and the needs of survival and the needs of power. And also because of this is why they justify this animal instinct, this primitive instinct of desire, that their needs supersede all human and ethical costs. And if we want to talk more of our narcissist behavior and this Machiavellian leadership style, is the hypocrisy, which is a persona. And he explicitly explains that the prince must appear merciful, religious, and honest, believable, while being prepared to act exactly the opposite. Can you trust a face that smiles but stabs you in the back? Will you be able to tell the difference? Will you be able to catch them in the act? So Machiavelli understood very well the importance of portraying to be a good man, to be a just leader. So Machiavelli encourages everyone to perfectly craft a public mask so you can use it to hide a ruthless, amoral shadow self. This demands a state of chronic cognitive dissonance where integrity is replaced by performance. Remember, the prince is all about efficiency. And then another trait of Machiavellian behavior is the lack of empathy. You must understand that everyone is replaceable for Machiavelli, because they are driven by the preservation of power. And that's all that matters. They will view other subordinate citizens similar to chess pieces, not human beings. We must ask ourselves if everything they see is removable and they are the only chess piece that matters. Can we ask ourselves, what did they think about themselves? And just analyzing this concept, it's almost that they believed they were a necessary bad. They were a deity. They were the solution to themselves. In a corrupt heart like these leaders, it displays the negative human instincts, what the nature of power really does to us, and also what will we do to obtain power. But more importantly, I asked myself this. I'm pretty sure Machiavelli was able to sleep with a clean conscience. And if he was able to sleep with a clean conscience, that means that he loved being evil. And those that he knew did the same. They did not have nightmares. They did not wake up in the middle of the night thinking of what they did. Because again, for them, their main goal was to obtain the ultimate price of power. I will give you a story about what this psychopathic and narcissist behavior looks like. Machiavelli talks about a ruler, a ruthless ruler that invades a land, and he notices that there are rebels and there's people stealing and misbehaving. So he tells his second in command, I want to send you there. Now, you have all my authority and power to do as you please. If you need to be harsh and kill the citizens that are doing all these violent acts and acts of rebellion against me, you have the authority to kill them, and also do it publicly. Like I said, it's better to be feared than loved. So he gives his blessings to his second in command and tells him to lead and rule under his name, ruthless. And so his second in command goes and does exactly what he is told. He rules ruthlessly, killing people, public executions. And obviously, one of the things that Machiavelli knew very well was, and he wasn't a fool about this, he was conscious that as a prince or ruler, you'd never want to be hated. Oh, yes. He understood how to play the tyrannic game very well. And this is where the hypocrisy, the biggest hypocrisy act comes in. The ruler now noticing that the people are transforming that fear instead of into flight and freeze, they're going to go into the fight mode because now they had enough. What can a citizen lose if they're already being beaten and killed on the streets and humiliated, undignified? They have nothing to lose. So they are going to rebel at some point. And the prince tells us this. Machiavelli warns us, do not be hated. Don't go to that point of being hated because they will come after you. This is how rebellions are created, and for that purpose, to fight the evil ruler. So what does this ruler do? He goes into the city he sent his second in command. He tells them, he asks the public, what do you think about my second in command? And everyone agrees that he's ruthless, he's evil. He's been purging them and executing them and humiliating them. And the ruler notices this. He's noticing the fear being transformed into anger, which is a great motivation to fight at all costs. So what does the ruler do the next day? He orders for his second in command to be killed publicly in the most humiliated fashion in front of everyone. Now, by doing this, think about the hypocrisy mask. What will people think of him now as a ruler? He steps in after the public execution and he is seen as a savior. He is seen as somebody that has restored dignity and peace to the public. But yet they do not know the unknoble acts. They are unaware that he placed the red carpet for him to come in as a hero, although he planned his second in command to do all the dirty work for him to be loved at some point. Because love is nothing, it's not like he doesn't want to be loved, but he also gets the respect. But he already input the fear. Now he has everyone's good attention. He has everyone trust. And now he can rule without having the people against him. Machiavelli reveals such a dark side of humanity for those in the political spectrum. And as you can see, these Machiavellian leaders will do anything to stay in power because they see power not just as an asset, but as an extension of their self-worth. And losing power is psychologically equivalent to losing their identity. So let's think about when Machiavelli is writing The Prince, did he lose his identity because he wasn't anymore with the elites playing the political power? But think about this. If your self-worth is only dictated by power and the loss of power and desires and vanities, things that are physically obtainable without any moral implications or moral judge or an ethical judgment, will you even think that you are evil? Will you be able to self-reflect about the actions you have taken and Do they deserve repercussion? And the answer is no, for those that have these Machiavellian behaviors. So do we see this today? And are we able to see these behaviors in our place of work, in our schools, in our house, in ourselves? There's definitely modern Machiavellism today. And when we talk about this, is about the dark triad of personality traits, such as narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellism. Now, you can either take The Prince as a book to guide yourself into being a tyrant, or you can use the book to check if somebody is displaying these behaviors. And if you see them, what will you do? Because you don't want to be working with somebody or under somebody like Machiavelli. Because if you read through The Prince, there's all this calculated manipulation, exploitation, and the cynical disregard for morality. Think about this. If you work, let's say, for 5-10 years, and you still have the same position, even though you have put your efforts and you work hard and you have learned so much that you have become an expert in your department, and you lead your people with honesty, and you display nobility, and you display integrity, but yet you haven't been promoted. This happens very often in our world today. There's always an excuse. And we can see this running through our modern industries, right? And our leaders today. You got to ask yourself, why hasn't this person that is a good servant to me not been promoted, not advancing in their career? And the answer is very simple. If you're the one looking up and you're seeing that you're not moving forward, please take the book, The Prince, and see if you can find some Machiavellian behaviors with those above you, because I'm pretty sure you will find them. And remember, there's the hypocrisy mask. Don't let yourself be fooled by the smiles, because Machiavelli said it himself. Those that praise you, those that bubble you up, are the ones that betrayed you. And I will give you examples about how this looks in today's world. Let's talk about the corporate boardroom. The leader who continuously champions team values while secretly exploiting offshore labor or sacrificing safety standards to meet quarterly targets. They maximize profit while maintaining a perfect ethical persona on their jobs and their social medias and everywhere. I'll give you a good example. If you work in back of house and you work for and this happens a lot in retail, and in order to meet this year's sale, you have to increase the amount of incoming shipment. Now, this means there's going to be more work overload. That means that you will have to do the job of 2 people. Although your hours would not change, your pay would not change. And if there's more boxes and the area where you work is not big enough to support this new change, this new operation, and everyone is put in harm's way, we're starting to see the Machiavellian behaviors on the leader, putting their ego, putting their objectives over their people. And this happens very commonly. It's just not told. Most people don't want to speak, because how does a leader retaliate, as Machiavelli reveals in The Prince? They give you less hours. They start reporting you for anything and everything. They say that you're not a team player anymore, that now you are conditioned to do more. And yet, when the time comes for a performance discussion, it becomes biased, and it hinders your possibility not only to get promoted, but now you don't get a payment increase. So we see Machiavellian characters, leaders, and experiences every day in our society. It's just that they are not reported. I would recommend go to the EEOC and report these behaviors if you want them to change for good one day. So the second point I want to talk about is the political spheres, the constant use of distraction, manufacture outrage, and strategic confusion. Tactics Machiavelli would recognize instantly. Oh, because he was a master of the craft and he saw it every day to keep the public focused, or I would say distracted, while core policies benefit only the leader or those in that inner circle. So again, this goes attached with the manipulation of giving you more work and telling you that these changes are necessary. But at the end of the day, there's only one beneficiary or a selective group that benefits from this. And this happens a lot. There's this division between managerial, executive, corporation, managerial, and employees. If you notice, there's a separation between the employee and the management team. And then there's another separation between the management team and the executives. And then there's another separation between the executive teams and those high executives and CEOs. And you can see the tiers. The employee does not trust the management team because think about it. If a store makes its goal or a company makes a goal, not everyone receives the bonus, only a selected few. And those on the top will receive the higher end of it. Those in the bottom will receive less. And those on the very bottom will receive absolutely nothing. So what do? They distract you with, yes, let's bring you a pizza party. Yes, we did this. We brought you some food. They give you the breadcrumbs. They give you the very least to get the best and the max out of you. This is exactly what Machiavelli is talking about. He saw this back in 1500s, and yet we see that common behavior today, but now it's done more discreetly. It's done more clever, because one of the things that Machiavelli talks about is be ruthless as a lion, but don't always be a lion. Be a fox. Be clever. Be suitable. And if this sounds familiar, if you're seeing this, the question is, what could you do to change these Machiavellian systems? Perhaps Machiavelli is right, and because everyone is looking for their own good, power, money, fame, elitism, that it doesn't matter. If it's only one of you, but 1,000 of them, will you be able to win? Don't be fooled, ladies and gentlemen out there. Machiavelli warns us about this, and if you, I encourage you to read this book because you will see the traits that I'm talking about in today's world, at your job, at your schools, everywhere around it. Even if you're catching yourself with it, maybe it's time for self-reflection and you can lead yourself to a better good, a moral good. Also, let's talk about the social media economy, the influencer who masters the narcissistic need for constant external validation, manipulating their audience, emotions for views and profit. They build vast empires based entirely on the strategic dishonesty of their persona. So a lot what you see in social media is not what you get in real life. And I'm not saying that everyone in social media is wearing this hypocrisy mask. No, I do believe that there's more good than evil. But what I want to emphasize is that not everyone has a perfect life as seen in social media. Everyone has deficiencies. What you might see pretty on the screen might be smelly in person. You can't smell through a camera, correct? But yet you can see beauty through your eyes, through the camera, but you can't smell until you see that person. This is what I'm trying to warn you. Not everything you see in the screen is true. There's ways to identify if somebody's being genuine or not. And you can tell through just reference and who's really trying to just call the attention or they're trying to really expose who they really are. And when somebody's honest, there's very little need for editing and bringing all these breaking news and trying to jump into the wagon of what's happening right now that is popular. They will stay with their conviction no matter what happens around the world. This is one of the traits that Machiavelli tells us. Machiavelli warns us of those that are led by emotions, are easily manipulated. They're easily deceived because they're not using the logic to see how beneficial this can be for them. And if it's something that they really need. At least in Machiavellian behavior, the need for power calls to more power, but yet they understand that they don't have time for charity. They don't have time for doing good deeds because that's just for little kids and religious people and people that are weak. And there's no time to be invested on that. Oh, and this is the most important one, I believe. And I believe the most insidious of Machiavelli's tactics is what I call the Hero Gambit. Kind of like the story I just told you a few minutes ago. This is the blueprint for sending others to do the morally dirty work for you. And then when the deed is done or the situation turns sour, this is the perfect time to betray and sacrificing those agents just like chess pieces on a board to maintain the image of integrity. So what am I trying to say is that they're willing to lie and build upon that lie. And no matter what it takes, they can only remain true to themselves, but through lies that are constructed for them and destruction for others. And the little story I was telling you was Machiavelli using the example of Cesare Borgia with his ruthless agent, Remero de Orca. When the oracles brutally alienated the people, Borgia publicly executed him, making himself look like the hero that restored justice and dignity. So whenever someone tells you, go do this in my name, make sure that there's an email. There's something written with their name. So the accountability doesn't fall on you. It's better to be safe than sorry. And it's better to be right on paper than wrong on the word. And let's not think that this behavior doesn't occur today. We see it with this so-called corporate restructuring. Have you heard of those terms? Have you ever been laid off? This is a classic Machiavellian tactic, the corporate restructuring tactic. The leader tasks a subordinate with cutting costs as the given, firing a department or enforcing unpopular policy. When morale collapses and it's visible and noticeable around the building, the leader fires the subordinate, announcing the move as a return of caring culture. The subordinate becomes the scapegoat and the leader saves their hero mask. How convenient. Wouldn't you be afraid to work for someone like this? Well, the ethical lesson remains, and it's easy to see if somebody's a real hero. And I will tell you how to recognize a real leader hero. Is someone that will always face adversity first. They're the ones that take the first step. And then as they figure things out, they will come and teach you. They will mentor you. They will lead you. They will not ask for you to do something they don't do themselves and lead by example. They will make sure that in order for everyone else to grow, they become smaller. They're always looking for the talents, recognition, and finding the proper positions for them to flourish at their highest stake. A leader hero thinks all the contrary about power and the need for more power. For a hero leader, giving power away is the true power, because the power you give to others will always tell your hero story. And if everyone is affected by the power you give, and the growth brings higher profits, better culture, more trust, reliability, quality of life, a better lifestyle for our families, now that power that was given to others grows and is affected outside of the power that you once had. And if you see power grow in every other's hands, think about how powerful you made others. And yet everyone will look back and show gratitude for where that power came from. And trust me, you will not be feared, perhaps not loved, but you will be dignified and respected as a leader hero, because your act of heroism saved many that didn't ask to be saved. But yet you did it, and yet you were able to surpass all the sales analytics and goals because you thought more about the social win than the selfish act of power and greed. Because let's be honest, greed is what feeds all of this. And when you go to a meeting, do you hear anything else more than just, let's talk about ourselves, let's talk about our numbers, how can we acquire more? And then there's never enough. Even if you made a staggering number and you surpassed last year's goal, there's a lust and there's that greed for more, and it needs to be more. And there's no other way than more, because everything else is a loss. But it comes with a price. All these wins come with a price. Machiavelli tells us the powerful, those in power, will use everyone else like a chess piece. And if you are part of that chess piece, it's time to wake up and realize that you're more than just serving a Machiavellic system that is so corrupted and that has disunified humanity throughout years. But yet this is the crude reality of politics in any spectrum. I'm not only talking about the political game. I'm talking about in corporation. I'm talking about if you're a manager. I'm talking about if you're a supervisor. Check yourself for Machiavellian attitudes and behaviors and thoughts, because it all starts with thoughts. And that thought is going to corrupt at some point. In the time when you haven't educated yourself on how to handle power in a better way, where it stems growth and fairness and justice, you will be relegated to one day be alone, just like Machiavelli was, just like Cesare Borgia was, because at the end of the day, you will have all the power and yet be alone. And being alone is something we're not made for. And Marcus Aurelius knew this very well, because Marcus Aurelius was all the contrary, a man of dignity, a man of values, a man that didn't want power but was born into power. And yet everyone was corrupt and different than him. And because of this, he couldn't connect with anyone except himself. And this is why he felt always alone. At the end, ask yourself, what is the life that you want to live? Is it a Machiavellic life, or is it a life based on dignity and morality and good deeds for yourself and for others? And remember, a leader who governs by fear or manipulation. And manipulation, I mean retaliation. I mean repercussions. I mean giving you the task they wouldn't do themselves. I mean those that haven't trained you well enough to do something and yet they judge you. Those kind of leaders are cowards whose power is built on sand. If you shake them a little bit, they will fall. Don't be afraid to confront these individuals respectfully, but do it wisely and do it during the right time at the right place as well. Remember that their perceived security is an illusion maintained by an enormous but yet fragile persona. True lasting and constructive power is built on all the contrary of what Machiavelli is telling us. Integrity, vulnerability, and building genuine trust with one another. That is the foundation that cannot be taken by fortune or betrayal. Because if you're true to yourself and you stand for your own conviction, people will stand behind you because they believe in you. And trust and respect are perhaps the hardest thing to get in this era. If you have any questions about Machiavelli, I will be more than honored to try to answer those questions. And I wish that you learned something profound today. I wish that this episode opened a spectrum of the kind of leaders that you serve. Or if you're a leader yourself, do you have these behaviors yourself? What can you do to better yourself, improve and grow to be a better human being and step away from the Machiavellic standards? And I want to thank you for walking with me today and analyzing the psychological path and dark side of power. But more importantly, remember the price you pay for the Machiavellian mask that you wear. Because at some point, you either end up like Machiavelli himself, exiled, not trusted, alone, or also like Cesare Borgia, with all the power and also alone. That is the price to pay for Machiavellian mask. I will see you next time. Thank you. Welcome back again, Unethical Podcast, where we explore human experiences. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do not forget our campaign. We are committed to transform your subscriptions into pro bono programs for mental health. So you can free somebody's mind from their traumas and help them heal just by subscribing. Very simple, and it costs absolutely nothing. Help us through this campaign, and we just want to pay forward, not only to our viewers, but for those that can't afford mental health services. Just remember, the statistics are real. Only 4 out of 10 Americans can afford mental health services. So help us change that. Hopefully, we can move the statistics and perhaps move it from 4 to 5 out of 10 people have good mental health.